Thank you, Valeria. It's great to be here, and it's wonderful to be with you, Patrick. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Great.
How are you, Alec?
Um, I'd like to start off with a question that I think a lot of our listeners here in Michigan are wondering. What's the weather like where you are?
It's warm here, it's sunny and warm. I have my air conditioning on.
Wow. Well, there's a snowstorm going on right here. It's quite wintry. And this highlights the amazing magic of technology that allows us to be co-located, even though we're clearly in different parts of the globe. So let me
Right.
start by asking a question that I'm curious about. I'm sure many of our listeners are, and watchers are too. What's a typical day for you as president of such a young and unique university?
Right. So my day to day these days is a little different than the norm, right? As you might imagine, because of COVID-19. But I'll just most of it is online, right? Because of COVID. But I will sort of answer the question, sort of a blend of before COVID and now. My day begins with a morning workout. You have to stay fit. I go to work and I'm involved in a series of meetings over the course of the day. And this is for me different today than it was in the very early days when I was the entrepreneur and I was very hands-on a lot of things. Now most of my work is working with teams of people and committees. And I would say that at the university, a few key meetings that I have that are very important. Obviously, my weekly meeting with my senior leadership team. There's a campus development team. We're on a campus that's been under construction for 10 years now, right? It's a new campus, finance committee, but also meetings with the head of student government weekly. So there's that sort of those engagements that I do. And then I also have occasionally travel, right? So I'm traveling, visiting with donors, I'm traveling, speaking at conferences and so on. And all of that travel is now currently grounded. So it's all virtual, not flying around in airplanes and sleeping in hotels and so on. That's my typical day.
Wow. I love the idea of starting off with a workout. I understand that, the importance of that. Why did you start Ashesi University? What was the motivation for starting the university in the first place?
So the motivation, I should say that when I decided to return to Ghana, a university was not my first idea. My first idea was setting up a software company. But I decided to do a university instead because I realized after many conversations with friends and family here that a fundamental problem that we had was a problem of leadership that was willing to challenge the status quo and act to change the status quo and to drive forward, and leadership that was creative. And so, and I felt that the leaders of our country were among the 5% of the time who had a chance to go get a college education. And so if we could change the way education was done, which is very rote-based, to something that was more geared towards critical thinking and problem solving, and that was grounded in the deep, important conversations about, what the good society is and what is desirable, what is beauty, what kind of society do we want and how do we want to act to create that? So decided that I could set up a university that would serve as an example to others and hopefully change the educational system to something different that would put out the leaders that would change our country fast forward 20, 30 years.
That's great. Let me ask about maybe a typical day of a student in Ashesi University, let's say pre-pandemic. Let's not, this is such an unusual time. How might she experience her day on campus versus and contrasting maybe how another student might experience her day at another university, and understanding how you designed this university to provide that kind of education more grounded in the thought of critical thinking versus rote?
Right. So I would say that the big differences would be that a student at a Shesi, when she or he walked into a classroom, would be engaging with the faculty differently. So the faculty at a Shesi are not people who are pouring knowledge into the heads of their students. They're really more like guides, right? So they are sort of guiding students on a journey of inquiry and discovery. So that's one big difference. The second is that they would be engaged in a variety of disciplines. So they would be, a computer science student might still be required to take a course in finance, a course in history or African philosophy. A business major would be required to take a course in programming, for example. So there's sort of this multidisciplinary approach to their education that they wouldn't find elsewhere in country. But I think that the most important thing or the biggest difference is that they would also be working in a community of trust. Right? So our students have this honor system where they basically pledge to us that they would hold to certain ideals individually as well as corporately. So they would hold each other to account. And that we can trust them, right? So we don't have to look over their shoulders during exams and so on. And this is dramatically different than what their peers would experience in other classrooms and exam rooms in the country.
Wow, amazing. Now at Swarthmore, I know you studied economics, but you also studied engineering, computer science, if you will. How did your technical background in engineering equip you for the current role you have?
Well, you think about, two things, right? You think about what an engineer does. Engineers are trained or educated to see problems, right? Take those problems apart and solve them, right? So in a way, they're trained to look at the status quo and question it, imagine something different, and design a solution to that with that new thing that they've imagined, right? So they're problem solvers and they're creators. The other thing is engineers are systems thinkers. They tend to think, yes, you break problems apart, but in solving the problem, you really do think about an entire system and how it interacts within itself and how it interacts with the external environment, right? And I think that both of those attributes have served me well. The ability to problem solve, the ability to think in a systematic way, I think has been very, very important to my work. And I would also say that it's been helpful to know math and be comfortable with quantitative reasoning.
Yeah, that's terrific. I find, and I'm just curious if you find this as well, I, of course, an engineer as well, and I have the same sort of problem solving systems approach, et cetera. And sometimes I think people from different disciplines kind of bristle a little bit about it. They have a different point of view in terms of how they do things, which makes the university life just wonderful. Did you find that when you were starting university, and how do you continue to navigate just the different ways people think and go about, if you will, achieving a certain outcome?
Well, let me say that when we started and we presented a radically different curriculum to the National Accreditation Board of Ghana, we got some pushback. This is very different. Why are you teaching philosophy to engineers? Or why are you doing this, that, and the other? And, my approach was, okay, I need to solve this problem of the resistance that I'm getting. And I need to do it carefully. I need to do it with grace, right? And I need to try and come up with a beautiful solution, right? Simple, beautiful solution. And for me, that involved doing things like hiring people onto my team that were respected here. So they were seeing a face, they were seeing faces around me and people around me that they could connect with, but also taking the time to explain what it is we're doing and explaining that, we were willing to make corrections and change design if we found errors in our design, which is what engineers are comfortable. Actually, it's one of the things about engineering is you sort of get comfortable with the idea of recognizing failures in things that you have built and correcting those failures. And so being able to talk about that in a very authentic way, I think helped that conversation. And then also translating, so one of the questions we had about the liberal arts core to our curriculum about humanities and social sciences, pointing out that, there's a piece of our curriculum that they all loved, which was our community service requirement, right? So everyone in the accreditation board that we met liked the idea that we were requiring our students to go out in the community and do projects. And so taking that, which I knew they loved, and saying, that is the laboratory for the humanities and social sciences. The reason why we're doing the humanities and social sciences as part of our curriculum is because it enables a kind of thinking and a kind of approach that is about questioning, why are you doing something? What is the purpose? What ought to be? And then that would inform the service projects that students would do. And I think all of that really helped sort of overcome some of that particular resistance that we encountered.
Fascinating. Very true. I'd love to, one of the things I want to understand is what makes you excited about your university? What do you see as a special element? But as part of that answer, I'd love to hear, how did you recruit faculty members in such a different teaching environment, a different mission?
Right. Well, the thing that makes me excited about my work every day is that I see young people who are really switched on. And I think that our approach of saying, our education is about, lighting up the mind rather than pouring information to a mind, is really working very well. And we see our students going off and doing some really incredible things as students and later on as alumni. So I get that's what excites me about the work that I do. Your second question, remind me so I get it right.
About how did you recruit faculty members and staff
Recruiting
members?
Faculty.
Yeah, in particular.
The first semester, before our first semester, when we put out job ads, we got 0 applications from Ghanaian faculty. We had no one interested because this was new. Private universities were very new in our country. And they were seeing a 37-year-old at the time who was starting a university. They really didn't believe that I could do what I said I was going to do. And so the first faculty we hired came from the UK and the United States. So we hired a couple of people from the UK, and we had some visiting faculty who had taken sort of a leave of absence from Microsoft to come and teach. And that was our first semester.
Wow.
And then once we got started and we were off the ground, then we got more interest from local faculty as well. And we've sort of taken the approach of really actively trying to recruit from the diaspora. So Ghanaians and other Africans who are in the UK or the US, and encouraging them to come home and demonstrating that they would be entering an environment similar to what they're used to out there in terms of the sort of the pedagogical approach of our university, as well as recruiting locally. And we really screen for a fit of culture, a fit of purpose. We ask all faculty members, once they've gone through the screening of, reviewing the teaching philosophy statements, interviewing them and so on, we have them actually teach a class with students, and we see how they do in the classroom and how they engage with students, so that they understand that teaching is important to us as much or more than their scholarship. I mean, research is important to us as well, but we really want to sort of drive home the point that engaging these young minds is really important. And then we make a decision to hire based on all of that review. That's how we're recruiting our faculty. And right now, I think we have a very healthy mix of people who've returned from the diaspora, people who've been working here already, and visiting faculty from mostly from the United States, but also a few from Europe.
Wow, amazing, great. I want to shift a little bit and talk about the role of technology and economic development. You know, as you know, in your days back in Microsoft, I mean, technology has just been such a huge engine of economic development in the United States. How do you think about the role of technology and economic growth in Ghana and other African countries?
Technology is a multiplier. It's a multiplier of everything that we do. And those societies that most intensely use technology have the strongest economies. One thing I find fascinating is that the countries that have the most robots per capita also have the lowest unemployment rates. And, you know, certainly technology is going to be an enabler here as well, and a multiplier here as well, in just about every aspect of our economy, every aspect of our society. So you name it, infrastructure, you know, power, transport, roads, water distribution, running our businesses, running hospitals, running schools, everything that we do, agriculture, is going to be made better and more productive by the use of technology. And so that's the role that I see. Is it's a multiplier, and it's a way to achieve efficiencies and also increase productivity.
I mean, you have such an amazing vantage point of having spent a large amount of time in the United States and a large amount of time in Africa. Do you see some surprising advantages Ghana has, and maybe other African countries have, for adoption of technology that maybe some of our viewers here in the United States might be surprised to hear about?
Well, the one that everyone talks about is, you know, we had such a critical problem with telecommunications infrastructure on the continent, and that that problem we overcame with mobile technology, mobile telephony, right? One of the things that people don't really think about in Africa versus other parts of the world, one big difference: if you come to Africa and if you were to try and travel from Ghana to Nigeria, which is in West Africa, or from Ghana to Nairobi in East Africa, the road network would not be the most efficient way to do it. We don't have that sort of strong interstate highway system that you see all over the world. And when you're traveling from cities from one side of the continent to another, or just generally across borders, air transport is the fastest, most efficient, right? And so I think that, you know, in Africa, there's going to be, I think we're going to have to reckon with the idea that we need to come up with efficient sort of short haul and long haul air transportation. We're going to have to look at how we maintain aircraft here on the continent rather than sending them elsewhere for maintenance. So that's one thing that I would say people don't really think about. But the problem is in everything, in all kinds of transport. And I would say that one thing I find very interesting, by the way, Alec, you're sort of working in an area which is about interplanetary transport, right? Um, and you're not burning hydrocarbons to do that,
Right.
right? The source of power is different. And I think that there's a real promise there, that much of the economic growth that needs to happen in Africa is yet to happen. I mean, for us to catch up economically with the rest of the world is going to require massive economic growth, massive infrastructure development. And there's a real opportunity for us to do it with cleaner technologies, right? So things that are not, putting carbon into the atmosphere, for example. And so electrifying our vehicles, the improvements in storage of electricity, whether it's in batteries or hydrogen, those things could become real game changers in Africa and present some real opportunities that we should be looking at.
Sounds great. And what is the role of education, but maybe specifically universities like Ashese in terms of contributing to that technological development in Africa?
It's a combination of training and preparing the engineers that we need, people who are going to create new technologies for our context, who are going to take existing technology and adapt it to our context. And people who are going to, and of course, all of this requires the ability to connect with other cultures and really be able to reach across our borders and learn from others, and also connect with each other on the continent across internal borders here on the continent. So it's a combination of effective teaching and research that needs to occur here. And I would say that, if I were to advise our government in terms of their research expenditures, that when you think about R&D, we should probably start with more the D part of that equation of really looking at, leveraging fundamental research that's been done elsewhere and developing it for our purposes. And I think the universities and research institutions have a role to play here.
Great. Should I say, sounds a little bit like Olin College here, a small engineering college here. And I will tell you that Michigan Engineering emulates Olin in terms of trying to have a hands-on experiential learning. Has Ashese had similar influence in Ghana, at other institutions, or even have other universities in other countries in Africa popped up or modified their operations to simulate what you've achieved at your university?
We've started to see some of that. We've started to see, some of the major universities in Ghana now starting up entire programs to really focus on how they do better at critical thinking. And we've set up a project, we call it the Education Collaborative, and we have about, I think, 140 universities and colleges from around the continent that work with us in workshops around pedagogy and ways of doing things. And so we're starting to see some interest, and we're seeing some universities adapting what we've done to their institutions.
Great. Now, just some advice maybe to us here. What is that academic institutions, for example, our College of Engineering, what could we do to do a better job in boosting our exchange programs, partnerships, and things of that nature, so that there's a better interchange of the flow of talent, students, faculty members, et cetera, collaborations? What advice do you have for us?
So I'm going to say one of the things that I think, by the way, I think that the U.S. universities and colleges already do a pretty good job of getting their students to travel and see other cultures and engage with other universities. One thing that I find missing in their engagement in Africa is that, and some of it is completely understandable, by the way. So usually when a student from the United States is coming to Africa, they want to come and do African studies. So they want to do things to do with our culture and our history and so on, which is completely understandable. It's something they can get done better here than elsewhere. But it would be really, really terrific if they could also come and do some of the same subjects that they're doing in their home institutions here in this context, right? And so, you know, if you're a computer science major coming and working alongside computer science majors here, actually adds to the experience of engaging with African students. And I think that this is the one area that I would say US universities should be more intentional about. So students, when they come here, don't do 100% of their engagement is around African culture, but it's around African culture and medicine, African culture and public health, African culture and engineering, whatever it is that they're interested in. Doing some of that here would actually give them a much deeper appreciation of what's going on here, what the opportunities are here, and how they engage with their peers moving forward in their careers.
One question that one of our viewers is asking is examples of achievements from students from university, in particular things like entrepreneurship, innovation, and social impact.
All right, so just a few off the top of my head that I'll say. There are alumni who started software companies and have been instrumental in working on mobile money, and one of the mobile money platforms that our students worked on has become really dominant in this country. We have students who've worked on, or alumni who've worked on our electoral systems, so the biometric systems that we use in our elections, which have really strengthened the electoral system here in Ghana. And we've seen students do a wide variety of things. There are alumni who are heading major, treasury and financial institutions and banks, who've led peacekeeping squads, who are, guiding our country, Bank of Ghana, in cybersecurity and all sorts of things like that. So I see our alumni really very engaged in some very meaningful ways that are making big impacts here.
Right. Yeah, going back to the Olin analogy, one of the things that makes Olin and frankly University of Michigan strong is the notion of the entrepreneurial ethos, if you will. And I'm just wondering, how has Ashese promoted the notion of entrepreneurism, namely creation of startups and things of that nature? And how does that work in Ghana? Maybe the confluence of academia, government, startups, and large companies, sort of what we call the brain belt phenomenon, if you will. How does that work in Ghana?
Right. So I'll talk about what we do at Ashese first. So for us, entrepreneurship is really about, what I talked about earlier about questioning the status quo, coming up with new ideas and designs, and having the courage to go implement and persist in developing those ideas. And that can be either in a startup or it can be in an existing institution. So you can be entrepreneuring in an established company, right? So it's more about the mindset that we're trying to develop. And the way we do it at Ashese is very much experiential, just as everything else that we do. So one of the first courses that students take at Ashese is a course called Foundations of Design and Entrepreneurship. And it's a two-part course that starts with design thinking and ends with coming up with a business idea, usually a micro business that can run on campus. And we have these micro businesses running on campus, run by freshmen, right, in their first year, right? And so they get this experience that's about trying to think end to end about the process of designing something that is meeting a need, prototyping it, iterating it through customer feedback, implementing it, working in a team, sometimes difficult team dynamics, trying to make the finances work and all of that. And that serves as a base experience that they can sort of reflect on as they go through the rest of their curriculum at HSE. And then in their fourth year, they do a capstone, and the capstone can be a design project or a thesis or a business plan for an actual business they're going to develop. Now, between the first year and the final year, we have a D lab that they go and continue to prototype ideas. That's all co-curricular stuff that they do. We have a venture fund that we've set up that supports some of that work prototyping through grants. And then we have a business incubator for some of the best ideas after the fourth year to actually get started on campus. And so we sort of try to build this ecosystem within the university to really drive this entrepreneuring mind. Now, once all of that is done, we know that most of them are still going to go get a job in a company that's already running and be entrepreneuring there. But we hope that after that, they might, get back to actually doing a startup themselves, right, after they've had that experience of working in the corporate world. Now, the ecosystem broadly in Ghana has some significant challenges or differences from, say, Silicon Valley, for example. So in Silicon Valley, you've got Stanford, you've got UC Berkeley close by, but you've got Sandhill Road. You've got these venture capitalists who are taking significant risks on great ideas. And you've also got friends and family funding, which can be quite significant in the United States. Here, we don't have significantly the friends and family funding that would enable scalable businesses, nor do we have a strong venture capital ecosystem here. And so this is a challenge that entrepreneurs deal with here. And so a lot of entrepreneurs, including those who are trying to build scalable businesses, are forced to go get a job, and then they try to bootstrap their idea as sort of a side gig, right, that they do next to their job, right? And then get traction that way. And once they have sufficient traction and cash flows, they can go get a bank loan, right? But this is sort of a very long way. It drags out. You don't have that sort of high risk capital that's easily accessible. And this is something that, I'm optimistic that over time we'll get it, but it's definitely a challenge today for entrepreneurs.
Is there a role global partnerships could play in terms of accelerating that process from, say, the bootstrapping mode, which, takes forever, to this more traditional American entrepreneurship mode of, friends, family, angel, and then various rounds of VC type funding to accelerate that process, do you think?
Yes, there have been a number of attempts at this, right? And so there are some foundations that have tried to do this. There's also, patient capital, organizations that are trying to be sort of the VCs of developing world. They tend to, though, because of their core mission, they tend to limit the kinds of business that they will fund to businesses that they can immediately tell are pro-poor, right? So these are businesses that are serving the needs of the poor from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
And that can be limiting because sometimes scalable businesses start not from addressing the poor, but by aiming for people who can afford it and who can eventually get you the volume so that you can become bigger, right? So there's a bit of there's something a little sticky about that approach right now, which is not enabling certain kinds of business. And if you think about it, if the investments into mobile telephony in Africa had said, okay, we're only funding pro-poor projects, they wouldn't have funded telephone companies building networks, right?
Yeah.
The first people to use mobile phones were middle class before it sort of took off. And so we do need to find a way to get that kind of capital into our economies.
Interesting. A couple of questions have come in about related to curricula. One is maybe a little bit more discussion about how you expose students to design thinking in general throughout the curriculum. That's one question.
Well, as I said, there's a course on design thinking. We have faculty who specialize in this, and they sort of go through the process of what design thinking is and how to sort of apply it, right? And in our case, we want people to think about what is the problem they're trying to solve, who's the customer, what is the need. They should think about that early on in the cycle of designing, and they should, as much as possible, co-design with the end user that they have in mind, right? So that's I know is a big emphasis in the way we're teaching design thinking at Ashesi. But it's that one course that they do, and then as they get through the rest of their courses, so if for engineering students, they also have their first engineering course is one where they're actually building a system right away. So they might be given a project to go build, go build a robotic arm or something like this, and they're applying those principles there as well.
Great. Now I want to hearken to something that Valeria said about how because of the relatively low need for capital expenditures associated with data science and computer science. In other words, somebody's spending the money on hardware, but it doesn't have to be necessarily practitioners. One of our viewers asked a question about the role of computer science, maybe with a focus on data science and AI as part of the technological engine for economic development in Africa. Just want to get your thoughts about that.
Well, I do think, everywhere you go, people are studying AI, right? And that's true for us as well. And you're right that, relatively, it doesn't take as much money to write code, right? You need a relatively simple machine, and it's really all about your knowledge and applying that. So there's definitely a role there. I also think that a lot of companies are going to become or have significant software development functions within their companies, right? So it doesn't matter now anymore what business you are. Any sort of large business in its work will need to have programmers and data scientists on their staff to help with decision support and also to help with improving efficiencies. And it's going to be everywhere, right? So the water company is going to deploy AI to help with, seeing what's happening in the quality of the water that they're distributing to everybody. The banks are going to have AI. It's going to be everywhere, right? So I completely agree with that point, and it's something that we've, with the help of faculty from Dartmouth College, we added, and Carnegie Mellon, we added artificial intelligence and robotics into our CS curriculum for this reason, as well as data science.
Wow, that's great.
Data analytics.
Okay, wow. That's wonderful to hear. You mentioned water, and I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to ask, the last time I was in Africa, the notion of water came up as a, if you will, lifeblood for humanity. And I wanted, we're in the Great Lakes area, we have a lot of fresh water here. Get some thoughts from you about the water challenges in Africa and maybe opportunities to address them.
Right. So in Ghana, in a lot of communities, the source of water, of clean water, is wells, boreholes. So we're sort of getting groundwater is the source for many communities. The water mains in the cities are limited. We don't have water mains in the villages, the rural areas. And so this is the challenge that we have. We now, of course, you know, when you dig up water, when you pump up water from the ground, you still need to be treating it. You need to be getting certain minerals out of it. You don't want excess iron or manganese or other things. You need to be testing for safety of that water as well. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to do a better job of doing that testing and cleaning of that water, making it fully safe. And there's a tremendous amount of work to be done in piping that water into households, especially in the rural areas, because right now it's community wells that everybody goes to, right? They don't have running water into their homes. And so this is a big challenge that we need to address.
Well, Dr. Patrick Awa, real pleasure. It was very nice to get to meet with you and to talk to you about these really important matters. I'll be turning over to Valeria, but before that, we're going to be entering a break until 9:30, and then the next panel will be the role of computing in Africa's economic future, and it's really important. Please do not disconnect from Zoom. Please don't. Valeria.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, President Awa, and thank you, Dean Gallimore, for the engaging discussion this morning. It's been a pleasure to participate in the conversation with you today. And I personally really hope that in the future, our two institutions could work together in promoting student exchanges, as you mentioned, and in participating maybe in Asheshi's education collaborative. I want to thank
to that.
What did you say? Can you repeat?
I said amen to that. I really look forward to that as well.
Fantastic. I'll be reaching out.
Okay.
I also want to thank our audience and especially the students for spending some time with us this morning, if you are in the US, or evening if you are in the African continent. I hope that your contribution and your vision will continue to move us forward for years to come and really strengthen the partnership and connection that we've been outlined today by our speakers. So as Dr. Gallimore mentioned, the next panel will focus on computing. And I hope very much that you will join us for that session as well. I will be serving as a moderator, and I'm looking forward to see everybody here at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time or 4:30 p.m. Central African Time. And as Dr. Gallimore said, please don't disconnect. You can just stretch your leg and be back in 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.